It's Tuesday, May 15th. I'm Scott.
I'm Rim.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, we share many anecdotes of the old game, classic Battletech.
Let's do this.
Warm today.
Warm yesterday.
Warmer today.
I'm thinking that tonight after the show, I'm going to put my air conditioner in my window just to anticipate all the coming thunderstorms and hot weather we're going to get.
I might put it in the window, but I might not put it in the window.
See, I'm also thinking if I put it in the window, I can put a bunch of this crap that's in my room in the way because I tore my room apart in anticipation of building my new computer, and my room is now staying torn apart until the RMA'd motherboard comes back. Luckily, Team Fortress 2 hasn't come out yet.
It's not going to be out for a long time.
I swear to God.
Wouldn't worry about it.
If my computer is not built by the time Team Fortress 2 comes out.
Just kill yourself.
Yeah. Well, it seems like there is a possibility that my motherboard was fine, and yet my power supply was also perfectly fine. And even though the power supply is perfectly, as far as the specs are concerned, compatible with my motherboard, there's a chance that they're, due to a magic thing that I'm not going to talk about tonight, incompatible regardless.
This is why the current state of motherboard power supply matching is completely inadequate. People need to know when they buy parts for a computer that yes, absolutely yes, this power supply is going to work with that motherboard. There needs to be no doubt in the mind of the purchaser whatsoever, and the manufacturers and the retailers are not doing enough to make sure that this is the case. I mean,
Abit did in a way. They did test like 9 different power supplies to say, these particular 9 will work just fine.
Yeah, actually,
but the problem is that wouldn't be a big deal if that were it, because say I could look at that list, see the specs of them, and buy a power supply that meets or exceeds all of those specs. It turns out there are specs that are not documented on any power supply.
Not to mention that lots of stats are, faked.
Well,
not quite 100% accurate.
Wattage is really the only one that's faked. And it's
but like a lot of power supplies would be like 700 watts, and that means, yes, this can put out 700 watts max. But really, if you make it put out 700 watts all the time, it'll explode, Whereas there might be another one that says 500 watts, and it can put out a steady 500 watts.
There is an easy way around that, and that is to look at the mean time before failure, because it generally is the case that the power supplies that cannot sustain their maximum output have much lower MTBF.
Yep.
However, least unless they lie about that.
It's still far too difficult. And actually, I would suggest that if you are someone like Newegg, what you should do, obviously, if someone puts in an order for a power supply and a motherboard, they're baking a computer. It's obvious. Try and see if it works. And then on the Newegg website, they have a bunch of power supplies and motherboards. Just try them out.
Why don't we patent a method whereby you automatically detect if someone is buying multiple components that could be construed to be a computer, and then follow up by some sort of automated email system to find out if said computer actually worked, thereby creating a database of such information to be used for business purposes.
Yeah, and then also Newegg themselves. They have so many power supplies and motherboards, they could have one guy just sit there. I mean, how many do you think I could test if I just had a motherboard with a chip in it and a power supply? And then I would test the power supply, and unplug it, try another one. Unplug it, try another one. How many do you think I could test in a day? All of them, pretty much. So it wouldn't be too hard for them to just have a guy sit there, one guy, and test a whole bunch of combinations. And within a few weeks, they'd have a nice little database. And when people went to buy motherboards, it would be able to recommend power supplies to them that would actually work.
But regardless, my brand new PC gaming machine, which I'm actually really getting kind of excited about playing PC games again, is sitting here open and empty. I installed every component I could, which consisted of the hard drives and the other drives.
Awesome.
And now it's sitting there open crying. I covered it in something so it won't get dust on it.
Well, I've been making I got a lot of stuff to do lately. With all these 3 conventions in July.
God, yeah, we'll talk tomorrow about the developments in the convention circuit.
Right.
I'm starting to feel like a professional here.
And then we've got a new convention in December, and I got a lot of shit going on. I'm glad I skipped that TorCon, and I'm glad you're skipping that Animazement. But
yeah, the thing is, I really wanted to go to Animazement. I just can't now.
You just can't, but regardless, I got a lot of stuff I need to do. I'm trying to fix the forums. I'm trying to do all this stuff at once, and I got no time.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I've got a Pokemon sitting here. And, well, these Pokemon that need taking care of. And how can I take care of the Pokemon while also taking care of all this other business that I need to do?
Well,
It's not easy.
Wouldn't your answer be to rush through the game without actually taking care of your Pokemon?
That's what I'm doing. I've basically been running from gym to gym to gym, only fighting the trainers I absolutely have to fight, running away from all the wild Pokemon, unless they're new, in which case I just throw a quick ball at them and catch them. And I'm just trying to run to the end of the game. And as it is, I'm about to finally take care of those Team Galactic fools, and then go get the last badge, and then beat the Elite Four, and then I'm done with this game. And basically after that, I'm going to get 6 Pokemon that I want to be my personal Pokemon. I'm going to train them up to be strong enough for battling with other people, and that's going to be it. I'll be done with the Pokemon.
See, I've actually been spending a lot of time walking around planting berries and collecting berries and planting more berries.
Yeah, I gave up on that. Now I just clear-cut all the goddamn berries.
Well, see, the thing is, I clear-cut them all, and then whenever I'm going to be in an area for a while, like if it's an area where I got to break through a bunch of trainers, I'm going to have to keep going back to heal or something, I'll plant a bunch of berries and tend to those. And then I'll pick them at the end of my business, because it's trivial effort, and I get 3 or 4 berries out of it.
Yeah, see, the thing is, what I've been doing, though, is I fly to the next area I have to go to, and then I just burn through in one go with a whole pile of items so that I don't have to go back, you know? And if sometimes, like, there'll even be a place to heal along the way. You know what? I feel kind of stupid. You know how sometimes you be walking around, you see a bed, right? And you go in the bed, and you'll think that this bed can help you heal, but it doesn't. You try to push A, and it doesn't help you heal.
Yeah.
I found out it does. It's just kind of obtuse. If you walk into a bed, right, it looks like you're laying down on your side because you're facing sideways. So you push A and nothing happens. If you push down while you're in a bed so that you're laying on your back and then push A, you can heal.
Huh, I never thought of that because I recently found a house empty near a mountain. And I thought, I can heal here. And then I realized, I can't. Well, I guess I can.
Yep, it's kind of, they should have made that more obvious. They should have just said, if you're in a bed, push A. Why do I have to push down? That's so,
Press A! Press A!
Yeah. So,
anyway,
in
the non-Pokemon news.
Non-Pokemon
There's
news.
too much Pokemon going on.
Is there such a thing?
Well, there is a rumor, and I like how the article at IGN even says, rumor : Nintendo Power shutting down.
Oh, that's not so bad. I mean, we just ranted last week about how magazines suck.
Well, the thing is, when I was a kid, I subscribed to Nintendo Power from issue 1 on. And in fact, I subscribed until well after issue 200, and then I kind of stopped caring about console gaming, and my brother continued the subscription until relatively recently. So, my whole Nintendo life, I had Nintendo Power. And I actually, for most of that time, really enjoyed Nintendo Power, because it offered a lot that really wasn't available anywhere else back then.
Yep. I mean, I didn't get Nintendo Power. I got Game Pro when I was in, like, 6th grade, and I kept getting it until, like, a few years ago, maybe, like, 2005-ish. Maybe the beginning of 2006, something. I don't remember. But I just gave them all away, finally, a few months ago. To that
guy in the back alley behind the post office.
It's not a back alley. It's a parking lot behind the post office.
Yeah.
He was some art teacher or whatever. And I was
art teacher named Adebisi.
I was just glad to get rid of those things because they were taking up a bunch of space and they were useless.
But Nintendo Power, and I realized that comparing it to other gaming magazines, even back then, the strength was that what it provided was partly being able to live vicariously through games that you did not own and never played.
Oh, yeah. When I was a little kid, I would get, like, these really shitty, crappy strategy guide. Like, it would be, like, multi-strategy guides for, like, a whole bunch of different
the
games.
red one, the yellow one, and the blue one?
Those ones, yes.
I've got them all. Those are the worst books ever, but I read them constantly.
They're, like, kind of big and thin and with lots of color pictures
They give hints like, hit the enemies with the sword.
Yep. And I got those at the school book fair. And basically, I played Double Dragon 2 by reading a little strategy guide about it.
Yeah? Well, the thing is, a lot of times there'd be a Nintendo game that you wanted, but your parents wouldn't buy it for you, and the local Blockbuster didn't have it to rent. So what did you do? You either found a friend who had it and stole it from him.
Oh, that was a good plan.
It was. Because then after a week or two, you say, oh yeah, here's that game that you lent me. And by then, they'd assume that they lent it to you and forgot. They wouldn't conceive that you stole it.
Yep.
But if you couldn't get a hold of the game, in Nintendo Power, partly because games were 2D back then and fairly straightforward, there'd usually be maps of the entire game and all sorts of trivia and backstory and art and fun stuff. And you could basically read through it and get a good 60 to 70% of the enjoyment the game would have given you just by reading the Nintendo Power.
Yep. The thing is, this became unnecessary over time because, people could get games, and there were too many games, and there weren't that many good games you wanted to experience, and the games that were so good you wanted to experience them, you would play because they were that good, and every other game, who cared?
Also, Nintendo Power was really good at giving you information about games and actual strategy and tips. So back before GameFAQs, if you got stuck on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that was really the only way to get your ass out of there. You could either read Nintendo Power, or, as I did 3 times, write to Nintendo Power, and they would answer.
Or try until you succeed or fail. Ask a friend who had Nintendo Power. Or I guess you could call the Nintendo hotline where you would have to pay money on the 900 number. I wonder if that still exists. We should try calling it.
I don't know. All I know is that as time went on, and games, especially once the N64 came out, it seems like 3D games, and also the type and complexity of games that were coming out, really made Nintendo Power obsolete almost immediately, because now it couldn't provide that vicarious experience, because it couldn't just show you all of World 1 or every item in the game so easily. And instead, it became just like every other trashy crap gaming magazine.
Yep.
Also, there was the fact that Nintendo Power didn't actually review anything, because if a game was in Nintendo Power, it was awesome as far as Nintendo Power was concerned.
Yeah, the thing that actually was useful about Nintendo Power up until the internet came around was the list in the back of coming soon games. That way, because there was no other way to know. How else could you know what games are coming?
Also, there was the great thing. It was pretty much, and I know a lot of kids when I was growing up really cared about this, but in every Nintendo Power issue, there was a card that you could send back, and you would say what your top 5 games were of all time from all the games they had listed, or you could write in from all the systems that Nintendo had out. And you could win some crazy prize. So everyone filled it out. And every month, Nintendo Power had kind of their billboard of the most popular games ever. And I remember watching Mario 3 just sit at the top month after month for practically forever once
Zelda
it came
1,
out.
Zelda 64 sat up there.
Yep.
Yeah, all those. But
It was always interesting to read that. And that was one thing that, I mean, I guess now I don't see anything like that anymore. I assume Nintendo Power still does it, but considering who would subscribe to Nintendo Power nowadays,
it's probably Pokemon.
I really wouldn't trust that, because I really think back then it was an accurate measure, because most people who played Nintendo games read Nintendo Power.
I didn't. Take that.
Yeah, but you also owned the heathen Sega.
That was later, but the point is that Nintendo Power at one time was pretty useful and awesome, and it's outlived its usefulness. And if it is not a rumor and it goes away, good riddance, I guess.
I won't be sad. Pretty much, once Nintendo Power went from the nice flat binding to the crappy staple binding, I was done with that.
GamePro did the opposite, went from the crappy staple binding to the flat binding, and all the ones that I had that were staple binding fell apart and they're gone.
Yep.
All
I remember when Dragon Magazine made the switch, and that was pretty much the moment I dropped my subscription to Dragon Magazine.
Okay, so you know how when you're on Steam, you go and you buy a game, and then you download it, and then anywhere you log in with your Steam account, you can download the game?
Which I didn't really care about when I first got Steam. And even back then, partly because Steam was kind of broken when it first came out, I really just didn't care about that at all. But now that I'm building a new computer, and I haven't so much just tried to boot Windows in, I don't know, 7 months, and I haven't logged into Steam in about 1.5 years, I'm really glad that I can just log into Steam on a new computer and re-download all my games.
Yep, I don't have that much hard drive space dedicated to Windows on my current computer, so I can't even download all the games I own on Steam. I own a lot of Steam games. It's kind of scary, and I barely play them. But, yeah. So the PlayStation 3 online store works in a similar fashion. You have your credit card information in your account, and then you can go on the PlayStation Store with your PS3 and download games, such as the brand new popular game Calling All Cars, which actually looks kind of fun. And the Flow game, which Sony paid a lot of money to make a PS3 game. Well, I played the Flash version a long time ago, and I have no need to pay for it. But apparently what some kids are doing is they're doing something called, quote, sharing. And
see, whenever anyone uses the word sharing in the modern era, it only means one thing, and that is copyright infringement.
Yes, well, this is actually sort of software license infringement, I guess.
Ooh.
What they're doing is, all right, I sit at my PS3. I buy a game, such as Flow. I go to your house. I sign in with some credit card information in my account or something. And then I download the game at your house, too. Now you can play, but we only paid one time. Only paid one time? 2 people have the game. 3 people have the game. 4 people have the game.
I see what you did there.
We only paid one time.
Now, how many times does this work?
I have no idea, but
I read 5.
there are some drawbacks to this method. The first drawback is, of course, that the person that you are sharing the game with has your credit card information. They could buy shit with your money.
Huh.
So you got to trust them pretty hardcore to share a game with them.
Honestly, I trust pretty much everyone I know.
And the other problem is that you may the sharer, the person who originally bought the game on the original PS3, may inadvertently lose their rights to the game if they need to, like, erase their PS3 or something like that. So,
see, now this is where it's interesting, because in this case, you can't claim any ulterior motive, because you were basically putting yourself at the mercy of both fate and your friends. This is nothing more, as far as these punk kids are concerned, than being a really good friend.
Yep. And, well, some people will get free games. I can see at least one person buying a bunch of games with someone else's money. And I can see some people just getting free games and being trustworthy and having a good time. But, yeah, Sony's a bit pissed, and some other people are like, hey, that's not cool, but they're doing it, and that's cool.
I think there's more details in the article that I didn't read, but I don't think you read it either, and I don't think it really matters, because I don't think anyone who listens to our show has a PlayStation 3.
I think Dave Riley has a PS3.
Yeah, he kept saying he was going to buy one, and I haven't listened to any podcast.
He has one. He calls it the PS Triple.
You know, I wish him the best with that, but I can't see it actually being worth the money yet.
The thing is, I must admit there are some fun things to do with the PS3. I mean, there are some fun things to do with any gaming console ever.
I think
an Atari Jaguar is fun. A Virtual Boy is fun.
I think that
it's just not worth the price.
With the Xbox 360, the resurgence of PC gaming, Pokemon, and all the actual Wii games that are coming out, because everyone knows the best Wii game out right now is ice hockey for the NES. But
I like how your idea of the best Wii game keeps changing.
The best Wii game out there is the last Wii game I've played. But anyway,
best Wii game is the Everyone Votes channel.
There's so many games to play right now that the opportunity cost of buying a PS3 to play games that are still going to exist for the PS3 next year when the PS3 is cheaper, I think the answer is pretty clear. You have to be really hard up for games or really, really overflowing with free time to want a PS3 now.
Yeah, well, imagine if we didn't do the show, we didn't do anime, we didn't do board games, we didn't do anything except video games, right?
All right, even if that were the case, I still have enough video games to occupy me unless I also didn't have a job.
Well, what if your job was like, not an awesome job that pays a lot of money, but the kind of job that most normal gamer schlub guys have?
The job still takes the same amount of time.
Oh, what if you lived like you worked like across the street and you
doesn't
worked
matter. I play my
day.
DS in the train.
I guess, yeah. So
the thing is, I have enough games already, not to mention my backlog of games, especially since I never owned a PS2, that I could keep myself content on gaming without buying another console, probably until the next generation of consoles, even if I didn't buy any more games. But then again, I could see a gamer having gone through all those games that I never played.
Yep. Well, it's just yet another thing, and up there with all the other entertainment where I used to have not enough money to get enough entertainment to occupy my time, and now too much money, not enough, and too much entertainment. I can't possibly do all of it.
Remember in college when you'd buy a game for the GameCube, and we would play the everlasting fuck out of that game because we weren't going to get another game anytime soon.
We would even buy a crap game just because there was no game to play and we needed a game.
Yep. I'd almost trade all my money for even half of that free time back.
Yep.
Problem is, I only had that free time because, like Scott, I neglected my studies.
Okay.
Things of the day. I think that my thing of the day needs no explanation. When you look at it, all I can say is that it pretty much sums up the last 10 years of my life.
I know what your thing of the day is. I figured it out already.
I believe you did. I think you see what I'm doing here.
I think I see what you did there.
So what do you got for me?
So sometime during the week, I was sitting at work, and I was thinking about You know, that crappy old video game show with the guy who had the earpiece and he got all the trivia right? And all
Oh,
that?
yeah. And then you Velcro the games to yourself if you win.
Yeah, Video Power. I watched it when I was a kid, and, you know, I rediscovered it on the internet a few years ago, and then, like, last week, Dig rediscovered it, so I actually watched an episode. Whatever.
I like the fact that watching it again, I mean, as a kid, all I could think was, wow, that guy knows a lot about video games.
All I remember about that show was the Velcroing of the video games to yourself, which was my ultimate fantasy, because I got, like, 3 video games a year, maybe 4 or 5 at the most, so getting that many at once was like a little kid orgasm.
Plus, every kid on that show was stupid. And they'd walk around like, I want that game, I don't want that game, I don't want that game, I want that. I would have grabbed every single game.
I would have grabbed every goddamn game. A free game is better than no game.
And I know I would have made it out with all of them.
Oh, I would have made it out. I would have just basically gone to the very first shelf, taken every single game one at a time, and like got every goddamn one of them.
It was like the kids who won that Toys R Us shopping spree, where they give you 5 minutes in a Toys R Us for everything you can get to the front door.
Yep.
My fantasy, and I had planned this shit out as a kid.
I just gone to the video game aisle and got paper, because
Well, the thing is, I watched the videos, and the kids would always like run around haphazardly, like grabbing individual boxes. I would have run with multiple shopping carts, and my arm just extended into the aisles, just pulling things in until they were full.
Oh, I probably would have had one for the Lego aisle and one for the video game aisle, and maybe one for the board game aisle. I could have done 3. The board game aisle would be tough because you don't want to get like 5 Monopolies. You got to take one at a time.
But now as an adult, I watched that Video Game Palace show, and all I could see is...
It's Video Game Power.
Whatever.
Video Power.
Yeah. That guy is totally cheating. He's got an earpiece or something.
Yep, the kids basically ask him a trivia question. He stalls for time. Someone tells him the answer in his earpiece, and then, they eventually tell him the answer, and he acts like he's all smart. So this got me thinking about some video game trivia randomly when I was daydreaming or whatever. And I was trying to think of a question that he couldn't answer, even with an earpiece.
I thought of a few when I was a kid.
Like, how many trees are in the overworld in Zelda 1? So that got me thinking I'd go look for a Zelda 1 map and see, all right? And then I ended up at this website, which is my thing of the day. This site is vgmaps.com. Guess what is there? Can you guess?
I would wager it's a map of some video games.
No, it's basically maps of every video game. They've got NES, SNES, Genesis, N64, GameCube, Ataris, any game that could possibly have a map, be it a, Metroid game where a map is obvious, or a Mario game where a map is semi-obvious.
Bionic Commando?
Yeah, possibly. Let me do a little search here. Yep, there's Bionic Commando.
Wow, because that was my primary use for Nintendo Power.
Yeah. Here, they got maps of Area 1, Area 1B, and Area 13.
That's it?
Yeah, look up. Area 13 is just a UN place.
Why would someone bother? Anyway.
Yeah, the point is they've got a lot of maps of a lot of video game areas that are created by pasting screenshots together, and it's pretty useful and pretty cool.
So, Scott, how many trees are there in the overworld of Zelda 1?
I have no fucking clue, but I can tell you that there are 12 times 6 tombstones in the graveyard.
So, tonight, we're going to talk about a game probably primarily through anecdotes of play. For you see, there was a game that we were all aware of well before we got to college. However, many of us never actually had the opportunity to play said game until college due to the fact that said game is, even among a lot of gamers, fairly obscure and obtuse.
It's generally inaccessible is the problem. But, so where did you first hear of this game?
Well, I heard about it because there were ads for stuff for it in Dragon Magazine. And there were all these older gamers when I was in middle school at the local gaming shops who talked about it, and I'd see things for it. But other than that, all I knew was it's something I probably wanted to play, but had no way to play.
Well, when I went to summer camp, I went to this nerdy summer camp 2 times. And at the nerdy summer camp, D&D was pretty popular, so I was playing that. And Magic the Gathering was pretty popular, so I was playing that. And there was one other thing that was pretty popular at this camp, and that thing was the game...
Sodomy.
No. The game we're talking about right now, which is Battletech. And I saw a lot of people playing Battletech at this camp, and I kind of understood that it was a game where you had robots you customized and moved them around a grid of hexagons and fired at each other. But I didn't know much more than that. And I didn't actually play it until years later. I bought a copy, actually, after I left the camp, but I had no one to play it with until RIT, where we learned how to play and played it many times.
Now, the system of Battletech is very complex, and it involves numerous layers, and it's basically a combat system for mechs. And if you don't know what I mean by mech, really not sure what you're doing listening to Geeknights.
Yeah, the word mech basically came from Battletech. In fact, I think it's a trademark of the Facet Corporation, which is now Microsoft. Yeah, let's give me a little history of this Battletech game, right? So in 1984, when we were 2 years old,
Wow.
a company called FASA, F-A-S-A, who you might know from such games
Shadowrun.
as Shadowrun and Battletech.
I still have my second edition Shadowrun Handybook complete with the gigantic Dr. Pepper stain down the entirety of it.
Yep, they came out with a game called Battle Droids, which was later renamed to Battletech. And it was a game where you had a map of hexagons, and you had robots that you would customize with various weapons at various weights. And there's a whole universe and a big sci-fi story around these robots. And the game basically consisted of moving the robot, determining line of sight, the range of your weapons, what you had to roll in order to hit, how much damage you would do, how much damage you would do to different parts of the robot, rolling dice to figure out the results, if any, and taking turns doing this until someone won.
It's a complex and gritty, unit-based war game at its core. However, the system as it is not really intended to be played just as, all right, you make mechs and I make mechs and we'll fight.
Which is what we mostly did.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. But the system was designed primarily to be a system not necessarily of role-playing, but kind of this intermediate between role-playing and wargaming, where you'd play a campaign, let's say, where you have a character, and there's other characters, and you have mechs, and you have money, and there's all this plot going on, and it was a system where you would play these battles, then deal with the consequences of the battles, and play other battles, usually scenarios, things like that. And I have never played a campaign of this game, although I desperately want to.
Yeah, me also, but if you ever played MechWarrior, MechWarrior 2, MechWarrior Mercenaries, I guess Mech Assault or whatever equivalent, those games basically have all the campaign action of Battletech. You know, you do a mission. If your mech gets destroyed, you have to pay money to repair it. If you destroy another guy, or if another guy on the opposing team or force ejects from his mech and you win, you can salvage it from the battlefield maybe.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun to be had there, and all these rules about, say you find a busted up mech, you can take the Gauss cannon out of it and try to mount it to your own mech.
Yeah.
Or if your auto cannon's busted, you can try to jury rig something to make it go.
Yeah. Except those games tend to replace the hexagon map turn-based war strategy game with a real-time first-person shooter robot game, which is just fine by me. Those are mostly good games.
Yeah, but it really isn't what I want in this regard, because the actual combat system of Battletech is very gritty and very real feeling and very, I don't know, rough around the edges in a combat kind of way.
Yeah. It always, I guess the thing is, the way the technology in the game feels is like everything is a piece of shit. And you're basically, it's not like Gundam where everyone has all these ultra fancy robots and who wins is all about who's like the ultra wicked badass pilot with all the mad skills and the flashy moves. It's basically, I'm a guy, and I got this piece of shit robot. It feels like an old car that doesn't want to go.
Yeah, they're hard to maneuver, and God forbid you try to maneuver them quickly.
Yeah, and the other guy, he's got the same thing. And we're lumbering around this battlefield, trying to kill the other guy without getting killed, and using some sort of strategy to do this.
I mean, this is a game where if you take a corner too sharply because you're in a hurry, there's a chance that your mech's just going to fall over and possibly break. If you jump up onto a building, you got to hope that building doesn't collapse.
Yep.
If you get shot off of that building, you better hope you don't land on your head.
Now, the game does have varying levels of rules. You can play with the simplest rule set, and then you don't have to worry about a lot of these things like skidding off the road or falling over on your ass all the time. But even with the normal rule set, things can get pretty hairy, and you'll be looking up like, oh, doesn't that trigger some sort of roll? Yup, it triggers this kind of roll. Well, what do I need to roll? You need to roll an 8 or higher. What if I fail? You fall on your ass, and then what happens if I fall on my ass? Well, we figure out which side of your ass you fell on. Then we figure out how hard that hurt you. Then we figure out if anything breaks. If something breaks, now we got to figure out if that explodes. Now, if that explodes, we got to figure out what that damage is.
And that's 2 hits to your engine. You're gone.
You're gone. It's actually one thing that it is often the awesomeness about Battletech is that you're driving such a piece of shit that it still manages to go, and that during the course of the battle, it's sort of like a demolition derby in a way, and where you just keep taking more damage all over the place, but you still might not be dead. You still might be maneuvering or are able to at least stand up and able to fire a weapon. And
I remember once having a mech that was so damaged and both of its legs were busted, it could not move or get up. However, I still had active jump jets on my torso and arms.
Yep.
And I could jump into the air only to fall and take further damage.
And as long as he didn't take so much damage in the wrong way that his mech exploded or he died, he could fly around, shoot, and you could actually take people out that way. And that's what makes, I think that's the most fun remembrance.
Yeah, the last thing you
Battletech.
wanted to hear from someone who had a busted mech who was on a cliff above you was, you know what? Fuck it. Death from above.
Death from above.
See, we could talk in great depth about how the Battletech system works. And beyond saying that it is very random in terms of the results of an individual action, but it's random in a very realistic way. In that, like real war, if you fire thousands of small missiles at a robot that is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet away, the odds of many of them hitting are fairly slim, and there's the chance that the one just goes up the tailpipe and blows up the whole mech.
Yep.
And it's very much that sort of realistic, gritty, you could die at any moment, fortune favors the bold kind of combat.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have you just walked in with a pristine mech, perhaps even one of the clan mechs, which is not a piece of shit, and you just get shot right in the cockpit and your mech explodes?
That was perhaps... See, here's where we're going to get to about Battletech. The game itself is not that great unless you're playing a campaign, because the game itself, on a raw level, without any other factor, I believe tedious would be a good word to describe this system.
Well, I think generally the way a game of Battletech goes, if it's just a few mechs against a few mechs, is that everyone maneuvers around the map a lot. You start really far apart where you can't really hit the other team so well, and they get closer. And people try to maneuver in such a way into where it is very easy for them to hit the opponent, but perhaps impossible for the opponent to hit them. And so like 10 turns, which is perhaps an hour, is spent just moving guys until someone gets a shot off. And until someone actually does some damage that is significant, nothing much goes on.
And even once damage is done, aside from the fact that after there's that first blood, because everyone wants to be the guy who survives to the end, and especially if you're playing just kind of everyone make mechs, all right, every man for himself, there's not much to gain from rushing in and just killing people because you're going to take a lot of damage. So everyone's kind of posturing and threatening and moving around, but then eventually someone starts firing, and almost all that caution disappears to the wind immediately because everyone realizes that it's really fun to shoot a whole bunch of missiles at your friend.
Yep, even though playing that kind of game, if you're playing for survival, the best idea is to just hide and let everyone else kill each other.
Thus, we are not going to talk about the system of Battletech at all. We are not going to talk about any more rules. What we are going to talk about is why Battletech is fun if you've got a bunch of geeks and a bunch of free time, especially if not everyone understands the rules, because that is entirely optional.
Well, the first reason Battletech is fun is because it's not just like some other strategy game, or turn-based or real-time, like, say, I don't know, Advanced Wars or StarCraft, where all the units are predefined. Battletech allows you to completely and utterly customize all the units. And we're not just talking about mechs. You can customize infantry, you can customize boats, planes, capital ships, hovercraft, helicopters, fighter jets, all sorts of stuff. The mech is the primary unit, but you can customize submarines, you can customize everything completely and utterly in every way. The size of the engine, how many weapons, which part, where the weapon goes in the vehicle of whatever sort it is, how much ammo for each weapon, how much heat sinks you're going to have for the weapon. Maybe you just want a mech that's going to overheat and you don't care. Everything you can customize completely. And even without playing the game of Battletech, it's really fun to just sit around customizing mechs.
When I was bored in college and no one was home, I would sometimes just pull up one of my programs and just make a mech because it was very fun. Now, I will point out that the process is complex enough to where there's a lot of software designed to do it for you, as in to figure out all the numbers and make it easy to know if your mech is valid or not and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
I don't remember the names of the ones we used offhand. We used actually
Pretty much
several.
most of them were crappy, and someone should, if I ever actually started playing Battletech a lot again, I would write a better one.
There were two we used that between the two of them, we could do just about everything we
I
wanted.
think MechWorks was one of them, but it was a crappy Windows program. But it managed to work, and it printed out really nice mech sheets.
Yep. Now, especially, we'd often either play every man for himself or some kind of team thing, and usually everyone would have one or two or maybe three mechs, and we'd agree on tonnages and restrictions and all this business. So we now play the first game, which is basically everyone's trying to figure out and play the rock, paper, scissors, mech, gun, marine system of, all right, what kind of mech am I going to make? Scott was highly partial to the mechs that were very fast and very lithe and not very well armored, covered with a million little lasers.
It's a really good strategy if you can get in the right position, because lasers in this game, you can fire them without worrying about ammo. They have decent range, decent damage, and they make a lot of heat, but you can take care of that with some heat sinks if you deal with the numbers correctly. And because you have so many lasers, you roll the dice so many times that your chances of getting a headshot if you hit increase greatly, because each laser can hit in a different part of the opponent. Whereas if you fire missiles, your chances of headshots and things are a little bit less because you're rolling far fewer locations.
Now, by the same token, the result of Scott's strategy was usually his mech running around like an idiot all over the middle of the battlefield and then eventually landing in front of someone like me and being immediately destroyed.
Yeah, the thing is, you got to be real careful with this kind of mech. You got to manage where it goes very carefully. You can't leave it in any kind of vulnerable position because it's not strong enough to withstand a lot of getting hit.
Now, I, on the opposite token, I keep saying token, I tended to
That's
play
the name of my rival in Pokemon.
where I'd make one kind of mech that was basically nothing more than a sniper platform. I'd have like 2 Gauss rifles and little else. And I would position myself on a cliff and just point my mech in the direction of anyone I didn't like and dare them to come near me. Which worked really well until until more than one person came at me at once.
Yeah.
In which case, they would immediately surround me and destroy me. Of course, there was probably my favorite moment in all of Battletech ever, where Pete designed what I would have to say is one of the most perfect mechs any of us has ever made at that tonnage. It was a huge, powerful, amazing mech. And the way you fill out damage in Battletech, and this is one of the really fun things about the game, is you'll have a picture of your mech, and it shows all the different locations, and then there's little bubbles inside of all of these parts of the mech in the picture.
Yep. So let's say your right arm has 20 points of armor. There's 20 circles, and every time you take a point of damage to the right arm, you fill in one of these circles like a Scantron sheet.
So when all the circles are filled in, your armor is destroyed there. And now you start taking damage to the internal structure where that armor was protecting, and you start taking possible damage to things that are in there.
So let's say there was a laser inside your right arm. Someone shoots your right arm. It takes damage. Okay, but they took off a bunch of armor, but they didn't take off all the armor. Your right arm still has armor on it. They shoot your right arm again. Now there's no more armor left on your right arm. Now they shoot it again. Okay, well, there wasn't any armor on your right arm when they shot you, so that shot they just fired went into your right arm and might have hit whatever's inside there. Well, there's a laser inside there. Let's roll some dice. Oh, that laser is now destroyed. Fantastic.
Now, it was particularly great if the thing that was there was, I don't know, a whole bunch of highly explosive ammunition.
Yep, because odds are, boom.
There have been mechs that took a shot to the arm that was already wounded and ended up having a chain reaction that ended in the pilot's death.
Yeah.
Now, Pete's mech was gigantic and stupidly armored. However, one of the limitations of mechs, unless you put forth all of the extra care to have an expensive, cockpit that's mounted in your torso, which kind of sucks for pretty much everything but this one purpose. So, this mech, Pete, dies. I don't think I was even in this game. And I come in, and everyone's kind of going, oh my god, you won't believe what happened. You won't believe what happened. And Pete's just sitting there looking really sad. And I say, what? And he holds up his sheet, and I see that the head is blackened in, and the mech had not been so much as touched anywhere else on its body. It had immediately taken one lucky headshot. That headshot had taken out the armor, taken out the internal structure, and killed Pete the pilot immediately. I would have cried. We kept that sheet around as some sort of triumphal artifact for some
Yeah.
time.
This is generally what makes Battletech fun, for us at least, is that because of the way the system works, it allows for a great many entertaining scenarios. For example, one time, I don't know who it was, someone made a quad mech. This is a mech
It
that...
was Alex. It was always Alex.
Was it? Okay.
Alex always made the clever mech that fucked us all up.
Yes, the quad mech is a mech that usually a mech stands like a human being. It has 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso, and a head, right? A quad mech is basically has 4 legs, and that's it. It has 4 legs and a body, and then the cockpit is kind of on top. It's like a little frog in a way, right? Where all the 4 legs are equal. Well, he made this quad mech, and a quad mech is slightly different from a regular mech in that, normally if you destroy both legs in a regular mech, it can't do anything. Where you can destroy some legs on a quad mech and it can still maneuver. But it's not really that much better or different, This quad mech, for some whatever reason, just wouldn't die, and it was hilarious.
It just kept getting back up, and crits would be rolled, it would overheat and lay there shut down for a while. In fact, I believe eventually it got shot and overheated so much that it did shut down. So the combat continued, and several rounds later, Alex succeeded in starting the engine back up and coming back in.
Yeah. Now that I really do think about it, it is a lot like just a demolition derby of giant robots.
Because the game never came down to one person just clearly dominating everyone else. It always came down to the last 2 mechs kind of slugging it out with what little weapons they had left, leaning on each other for support until one of them eventually collapsed.
Yeah, and the game allows you to do so many cool things that might not actually be useful in terms of rules, but are just entertaining. Like, if you chop off a mech's arm, you can pick up that arm and club him with it, and you can jump up in the air with your jump rockets and land on someone, feet first, or you can kick another mech right in the business. You can do all sorts of crazy stuff.
Now, here's where I think this game really shines for a bunch of geeks hanging around late at night, particularly if you have broken into some sort of conference room somewhere on your campus.
Yep.
Because one of the things about the game is that not everyone knows how to play because, like we said, the game's kind of inaccessible. So it's hard to have multiple copies of the rulebook, and not many people, even us who have played the game a lot, are intimately familiar with the rules, especially with the sheer number of lookup tables and special cases and all this business.
Now, I'm familiar with the basic rules, like how do you move, how do you shoot,
but I don't remember.
How do you figure out if you hit? But
I don't remember if an 11 is a hit to the right center torso or the leg.
Yeah,
or
I remember some of the chart. Like a 12, I think, is a headshot, and a 2 is a center torso crit. But
yep.
I don't remember.
Crit or crit chance.
Yeah, I forget.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you're a bunch of geeks and you're into this sort of thing, I mean, if you already enjoyed making these mechs, it's actually surprisingly fun to sit there and look up the rules, because basically you'll all be running around, you'll be full of camaraderie and good spirits and good times, and then someone does something weird, and then someone will say, all right, we got to look it up. So the 2 people who have books start looking through the rule book, and everyone's debating, I think we're going to have to roll a pilot skill check. I'll bet there's a penalty to it. I don't know. Are we going to have to roll an engine crit? I hope we roll an engine crit.
Man,
oh
isn't there a chance the engine explodes if this happens? I want to see the engine explode.
And then someone will read the rule, and now we got to actually execute it. And one of the most fun things in this game is if someone gets hit bad, everyone sits there while the guy who attacked starts rolling all the crit chances or all the hit locations, and the person with the book starts reading off where those things actually hit, and the person who owns the mech is going, fuck. Damn it! So it'll be like, I'll be rolling, or someone else will be rolling, and I'll be reading the book, and I'll be like, all right, Scott, you take 4 hits to the center torso. 4 more to the center torso with the crit chance. Oh, crits! Roll your crit, Scott. And then Scott's like, what did it hit, Scott? What's a 4 hit?
My gyro is exploded.
Oh,
now I have to make a piloting skill check. Oh, I fell over. Oh, I broke my arm.
Oh, he fell over.
There's ammo in the arm. It exploded.
Oh, he fell over, pipes in Pete. Doesn't that mean we have to roll more damage?
Yeah.
I think it's based on his tonnage. Oh, shit, he has a heavy mech. He's probably done for.
Yeah. Yeah, the rules of Battletech are definitely fun in and of themselves. That's why they release so many goddamn rule books. If you're not satisfied with the simplest rule set or the standard rule set, they sell books like Maximum Tech and Tech Manual, and some fictional year in the Battletech universe, which we're not going to talk about the Battletech universe at all. But
no.
And these books just have more weapons, more equipment, more rules, more this, more that for you to add into your game to make it more complex and more hilarious.
So, unlike most games where complexity and difficulty and constantly having to look things up is definitely a detriment, with the right group of friends, and remember, everyone involved in playing has to be equally into it.
Yep.
Luckily, that's not difficult to achieve.
No, it's not.
You will have great fun with this game, and these difficult rules actually serve to enhance the experience.
Yep.
I would highly recommend that if you have a bunch of friends, especially if you're in a geeky college or have a setting where there's a bunch of geeks around who are into gaming at all, go buy everything you need to play Battletech. Learn the rudiments of the rules. Don't worry that anyone else doesn't know them. Just force a bunch of people to come over, tell them to set aside 4 hours, and try to play this game.
Yep. Now, keep in mind, there are a lot of Battletech games out there, and I don't want you to be confused. The game we're talking about is Classic Battletech, which I believe is currently published by WizKids. Now, they are Fan Pro, I think. I'm not quite sure.
I don't know. You realize that half the books we had were obsolete and out of date when we played.
Yeah, I know. But regardless, there are other Battletech games, like there's the MechWarrior Mage Knight game, which
Don't play that.
We're not going to talk about.
We should review it someday.
If you get miniatures that look at mechs with clicks on the bottom, that's not the right game.
In fact, I'm going to review that game right now. It sucked ass.
Okay, if you get a video game, that's not the right game. If you get MechWarrior, the Battletech role-playing game, that's not the right game.
If you get MechWarrior 2, that's a good game, but it's not the right game.
No, it's not. But the game you're looking for is Classic Battletech. You will need... There's a box, actually, you can buy that will give you everything you need to play the game. But if you don't want to buy that box, you can't find it. You need, what is it called? The Master Rule Book or whatever?
I think so. We'll probably post in the forums exactly what you need with links.
Yes, we will post in the forum links to everything you need to play the game we are describing so that you do not purchase the wrong product if you actually decide to play this.
I also point out, as an incentive, generally whoever owns a given book is the one who gets to read the relevant rule. So if I own the Max Tech book and Scott owns the normal book and we're all playing and someone has a Max Tech question, I get to be the one who says, well, it says here that you explode.
Yep. Also, if you're getting into Battletech, don't go nuts with the books. There's a lot of books. There's a lot of map sets. There's a lot of stuff. Don't go nuts buying too much because a lot of it you don't need unless you start getting into really advanced, complicated campaigns and all sorts of other crazy shit. So
and also,
at first, just buy the one rule book.
Unless you want to play a campaign, or you have a bunch of serious gamers, and you're willing to play straight-up scenarios that are difficult, put together, and take a long time to play, don't take this game seriously. Because skill matters a lot, and tactics matter a lot, and strategy matters a lot, and design and knowledge matter a lot. But in the end, like real war, there's a lot of randomness, and a lot of capriciousness, and a lot of vindictiveness, and a lot of revenge killings, and a lot of just general dickery.
Well, I think the way they usually play this game, when they have serious competitive play, is they play with a lot of stuff. We tend to play with a few mechs, because that's hard enough for us to manage, just a few mechs. But when people tend to play, they tend to play with, lots of mechs, like maybe 20 of them, and then they play with infantry and elementals and all sorts of stuff all at the same time, in a 1-versus-1 giant battle on a giant map with a crap ton of units and a lot of complicated terrain. And when you have all those things, it tends to make a lot of the bullshit randomness matter less and a lot of the strategy matter a lot more.
Yep.
Of course, it also makes the game less fun, in my opinion. It makes it take longer, and I guess that's the way the game was meant to be played.
To me, it's equally fun for a different reason, and I would love to play that way, but I do not know anyone who is willing and able to run that game well enough to where I wouldn't get bored.
Yeah, the people who really play hardcore, they don't even play with hexagon maps. They play on just an open terrain, just a piece of, like the fake grass with the fake hills and everything, and they use tape measures, and they play with actual miniatures.
And even our crap way of playing with, we just use the boards and the hex grids and the little mini whatevers. You still need a tape measure and a laser pen to figure out things like line of sight.
Yeah, line of sight is going to be one of the biggest things you're going to have to do.
Just use a laser pen. Don't even try to do anything else.
Yep. It's like, hey, can this mech see that mech? Yes, no, maybe. It's not always easy when you're first starting out to answer that question.
Yep. But the fun of this game is that I remember one particular game, and I was both infuriated and yet at the same time couldn't help but laugh. We had a huge knockdown, drag 'em out melee. And in the end, I killed almost every single mech that had died on the field. I did more damage than everyone else combined. I dominated, partly due to luck, partly due to my mech design, partly due to other people fighting with each other. I kicked everyone's asses. But Scott, with his little runaround with the lasers mech, jumped on me out of the forest after I had defeated my last opponent other than him, with his pristine mech that had spent most of the map running around like an idiot, and just lasered me to death while I was kind of hobbling away trying to get some shelter and cool down in a lake.
That's the strategy.
And then Scott won because the rules weren't kill the most people, the rules were last man standing.
Yep. Well, you should have paid attention to those rules.
Well, the thing is, playing the game the way we did, it was so fun because no one really cared if they won. What you cared about was if you did something awesome. Yep. Someone would often charge to their death only because it was an awesome thing to do. Someone would make a weird mech that had no chance of winning only because they wanted to see what that mech would do.
Yeah, it's sort of a weird experience, actually, for the way we played it, in that that's sort of like the way you play D&D. Is like D&D, you don't play to win, but you're rolling dice and doing stuff in order to see awesome shit happen and make an awesome story. Well, Battletech, you're just really restricted in that you're only making an awesome story about one battle between shitty robots. But you're trying to win, and there's a lot more dice than D&D, and it's a lot more rules, and it feels like a strategy game. But really, you're getting the same thing out of it that you would get out of D&D, which is an awesome story about an awesome robot battle.
It kind of takes, in my opinion, the best elements of Beer and Pretzel's D&D and makes them even more awesome.
Yep. And it also allows for the more serious experience for the people who play Battletech the proper way, not the way we play.
Yep, and the other piece of advice I want to give for if any of you actually want to get into this is that there is clan and inner sphere. And all I'm going to say is if you're going to play the way we do, where you just kind of all make mechs of a similar tonnage and then fight, don't play with clan because those mechs are too good and it's not as fun.
Yes, the story basically of Battletech, I didn't want to talk about it, is that there's clans invading this area of space called the inner sphere. I'm not going to say anything more than that.
I'll make it very simple.
The clans have awesome technology. The inner sphere have shit technology.
The clan people are assholes, and the inner sphere are backwards primitives.
Yep. And basically, in the campaigns, and also Mech Warrior type video games, you generally are inner sphere guys trying to fight off the clans, or your clans fighting each other, or something like that, depending on what part of the story or what year it is in the timeline. And the clan people, their mechs are just plain better. They're just plain better. So if I was to have, say, 100 tons of clan mechs, and Rim would have 100 tons of inner sphere mechs, he can't really win, because my mechs are just better. Clan mechs actually work.
Now, here's the difference in gameplay for us, and here's why I recommend playing inner sphere. If you play clan, especially reading the rules, you think, wow, clan is awesome, I want to play clan. And then, all right, so say you want to make a mech, an 80-ton mech, and you're using clan. Everything you want just fits, and you have an awesome mech, and it takes you 20 minutes, and it's super badass.
Yep.
Making a mech in inner sphere is this exercise in delicious frustration, where you have to make decisions like, I want that Gauss rifle, but the only way to make it fit is to not have any armor on my back.
Yep. Meanwhile, the clan Gauss rifle is much smaller, lighter, and more efficient. You can fit like 2 of them in a mech with no trouble.
But playing with limitations, like limiting the tech level, or not giving yourself access to clan, makes the game interesting, because now everyone's mech is very different, and everyone had to take severe sacrifices to get what they wanted. You want to fit more tonnage in? You got to get that XL engine. And that XL engine is not too friendly.
Nope. All right.
Or the fabled XXL engine. I made an XXL once.
Yep.
And I took an engine hit almost immediately and then died.
Lol.
All right. I think we're done. Battletech is awesome, and it has provided a great deal of the friendship that the Front Row crew now shares.
Even though we haven't played it in years, and we probably won't play it again for a long time.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter, because we played it enough, and we got it all. It's in our blood forever. And I probably have an infinite number of anecdotes, because once I told them all, I could probably just start making them up, and there's a decent chance that they're at least somewhat true.
Yeah.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.